You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, Anthony Leverett here, host of the Next Pitch podcast. And on behalf of my Emmy Award-winning producer and partner, Jason Cardona, thank you so much for listening to the show. We are having a blast doing this. Happy New Year to everybody. We had a little break from the youth sports topic, but we are back at it today. And just a reminder, if you like what we're doing, share this podcast with your friends and family. And best way to spread the word is to tell somebody about us and have them listen to us. We greatly appreciate it. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Linda Flanagan. Linda is a freelance researcher and author, and I read her book. My wife brought her book home, Take Back the Game, a couple years ago, and then got connected to her recently, and she agreed to come on the show. We talk about all things youth sports, the youth sports industrial complex, as she has named it, and touch on a whole bunch of different topics, and really appreciate her coming on the show and really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Without further ado, here's Linda. Linda Flanagan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this. It is an absolute honor to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do this.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So first of all, before a ton of stuff to dive into, and we've done 70 some shows, and I'm as excited for this one as any one that I've done, because I read your book like 2.5 years ago before I ever even thought about doing the show. So a ton to get to, but how do you describe yourself kind of in today's world? What do you do? What sort of makes you an expert on this youth sports conversation that we're going to have today?
Okay. Well, I always recoil at the thought of being called an expert, because there's so much I don't know, and it's a vast field. But I guess I would describe myself as a freelance writer and independent researcher. I do, I follow my nose in terms of what interests me in the subject. And I think there's so much that's interesting. Right now I'm looking at character, doing a little project on character in sports, and the whole idea of whether they build character or not. I also write for an education site, the NPR education site Mindshift. So I've got a lot of different sort of research projects that usually turn into something published. They're not just for my own musings. And I have a history in athletics. I was a coach for 19 years, and I've been a writer my whole life. But I've shifted over time into focusing more on athletics because obviously youth sports is a big and expanding issue, and it's something that's sort of near and dear to me.
So let's start with your background as an athlete and as a coach. So obviously you don't just wake up one day thinking I'm going to write a book about something, right? There's got to be some steps along the way to get there. What did you coach, and how did that sort of shape your thought process as you were kind of navigating that experience as a coach?
Well, I coached high school cross country and track. I was a regular cross country coach, and track more intermittently as needed at a girls' school, high school level. And this evolved out of kind of organically. I was asked if I wanted to coach at the school because I was kind of not known, but I was a common figure around town running with groups of people. And, I had a good resume as a runner. I had been very serious as a runner. So I was asked if I would, be interested in coaching, and I was. And that, evolved out of my own experience in sports growing up. I was always really active, and I played softball, casually at home, throwing the ball around with my sister and my father, hitting balls, and just, kind of natural, organic. And then I played for a team when I was, 6th grade or so, and then picked up tennis, and which I did not like as much, although I always like to point out that I did play first singles for my high school team. Humble brag, not so humble brag. I lost every match because I was terrible. We were a terrible team. It was nice kids, but we were terrible. So that informed my sort of athletic youth. And then I think because of that, running and fitness has just been a part of my life forever since I was a child. And I think that's also inspired why I wanted to be a coach, because I felt like I had gained a lot from athletics. I learned a lot. It wasn't always great, but I learned a lot. And I wanted to help another generation of tiny, fingernails worth of the next generation of girls to get the benefits of running, because it's such a wonderful lifelong sport. And I thought, well, what better way to do this than to coach? And it's fun. And I really enjoyed the teenagers. They were great.
Yeah. So you get to the point where you decide to write this book, right? And this book is this right here. And I read it right after it came out. My wife found it and brought it home. She's like, Anthony, you've got to read this. So we both read it. And it was the first time I'd been in athletics my whole life, right? Player, coached at the highest level and collegiately and did a whole bunch of things, but I'd never seen it articulated in one book the way that you articulated. And it's called Take Back the Game: How Money and Mania Are Ruining Kids' Sports and Why It Matters. And you start with your own sort of parenting story to begin that. Kind of take us through and I think every parent that's out there has ever had this thought in their head: what the hell am I doing? I'm sitting in a car. What in the hell is going on here? It's pouring down rain. My kid's about to get in. We haven't eaten dinner. Like, what was that moment for you?
Yeah. Well, I had a few of those moments. See, I thought you were referring actually to I think, if I recall correctly, the book opens with my strutting around the parking lot after my, like 9-year-old, I can't remember how old he was at the time, had done so well in the recreation basketball game, and just feeling so like just bloated with pride. And also it's kind of an undiscussed subject, like the pride parents feel like, because it's kind of there's always this feeling that you should say, oh, everyone did well and all of that. It was a team effort, but inside you feel like, yay, my little star. And which I felt, and it's utterly lame and embarrassing at this point, but that's how I felt. But so that's how I open it. So I understand that like ego drive that your kid's a good athlete provides. And then there was another scene where I had driven him. It was a Sunday night to this soccer practice. Again, it was like a Sunday night. It was an hour away. It was raining. The game was delayed. Then they went back on the field. There's this back and forth. Every parent knows this dynamic. Finally, I think they played for about 10 minutes, and then it was called because of lightning. And it was like, what? It just dawned on me, like, what the hell are we doing here? It's a Sunday night. Like, I've got 2 other kids and my husband, they're back home eating some garbage that I put together before, probably, unless they just got chicken fingers somewhere. And I just thought, this is crazy. What are we doing this for? It makes no sense. Just for our family life and being together as a unit. And that was one of those moments. And I think, again, I had several of them. I think probably most parents do, where they question why they're doing this.
Yeah. And the reason why we do it, in my opinion, is because of money. And not our money, somebody else wanting our money. And you've named it, and it's the first time I heard this, the youth sports industrial complex.
Yeah.
And I think when you wrote the book, it was about a $20 billion a year industry. And I just read a stat that it's closer to 40 billion now. And yes, that's in 2.5-3 years since you put the book out. What is, kind of define that? What is the youth sports industrial complex?
Well, it's all the various players out there in the universe who are selling something to you as a family about something you need to get your child, to develop your child quickly and well and help advance them in athletics. And it's the sports tourism industry. That's really one of the big ones, the hotels, the tournaments, It's the equipment, it's registration fees, it's taken off so
Yeah.
dramatically, again, since I wrote the book. And that's in part because, there's been a lot more attention paid to this because private equity firms have started buying up these youth sports organizations. And, a month ago, I don't know if you saw this, there was a congressional hearing on youth sports. And one of the people testifying was a former an antitrust lawyer who'd been specialized in this. And she explained how it all works with private equity firms buying up all this, competitors in this fragmented universe. And then, you know, serial acquisition and vertical integration and buying up the various levels of the supply chain. So they have kind of a lot of control over kind of all layers and levels of the youth sports market. And she calls it a wealth extraction project or enterprise. And we're kind of been moving in that way so that it's become such a big business in just a couple of years that,
Yeah.
who knows where it's going, but that has been the trend. And I don't think I don't think it's a positive for kids and families.
I couldn't agree more. You liken this to playing the lottery. The kids playing sports to get a scholarship. And let me grab my phone here. This is super unprofessional way to do this, but I just saw this, and I'll just give you one sport. Let's just use volleyball because it's the first one I see. There are 471,000 volleyball high school athletes. There are 18,000 NCAA participants, which means 1.2% of all high school athletes that play volleyball play Division I volleyball.
If that makes sense.
And it is across the spectrum in every single sport that you go through. Yeah. And I'll share this with you when we get off the air here. I'll send it to you. But it was fascinating to me. I think the biggest one is 3.9%, and I can't remember what sport it was, but 3.9% of the student athletes in high school actually play in college. So it is like playing the lottery. And how did this happen? Like we are looking at families are spending thousands and thousands of dollars from the third grade through high school on this dream of becoming a college player when only 3% of them actually have that chance.
Okay, so what my understanding of the research in volleyball, it might be 3% overall, and it depends on the sport. Some sports are much more challenging to make it into college than others. But overall, at least my understanding is that it's 6 to 7% of high school athletes play at the collegiate level, not Division I, at the collegiate level.
The spectrum, yes, that is
spectrum.
Correct. That is correct.
And volleyball happens to be one of the really tough ones for boys. And then others are like kind of not as challenging as you would think, like a girls' ice hockey. It has the highest rate of high school players going into playing college. And people understand this because the one reason we got here is because colleges offer this an advantage in admissions to athletes that they don't offer to the trombone player. So if parents understand this, then they seek out, they pursue this with their children so that they can have this advantage as they go through. And it's not entirely that. I mean, I think most parents start their kids playing in sports because it's good for them. Everyone wants their kids to be active and have friends and all that. And sports are great, right? So it starts that way. And then because of the youth sports industrial complex and all the messaging about you got to do more, you got to do better, this is how you get to the next level, and you're this like intra competition among parents, that they end up spending exorbitant amounts of money, and it kind of then turns into sort of a quest for a quest for either a scholarship or for entry into a better college than they would otherwise be admitted to. And so we discussed the percentages of kids who get in, but the amount of money, the percentage of kids who make any money is a lot lower. It's 2% of high school athletes get any money at all, let alone a free ride. So that when you compare it to a lottery, it's because if you take the money that you have invested in these high-end sports, which for some people is again is thousands and thousands of dollars, and just put it in an index fund and let it like accumulate, you'd likely be better off than banking on them turning into a college athlete. And the other thing that's kind of is all over the map is how much people are spending. And one thing I've learned in studying this issue is that the estimates vary dramatically. Like depends on who's doing the asking. But oh wait, I lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about? You can edit this, right?
Yeah, no need. So
yeah,
it's
the amount of money. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
the amount of money.
So
The
the Aspen Institute, does this annually, how much parents are spending, and they reported this past year that parents are spending $1,000 on a child's main sport per year and about $500 on their secondary sport, which is a 46% increase since 2019. Now you get the New York Life Wealth Watch survey, which came out in April or March or something, and their number was parents spend $3,000 a year. So it depends on who you're talking to, and it really depends on the sport. And because some are just out of sight, like ice hockey. But I would love to share the story of this young man I met a couple of months ago. We were talking about sports, and he just sort of said matter-of-factly that his parents had spent, I don't know, $60,000 or $70,000 a year on his soccer career since he was 10. Now he was like an adult male at this point.
Yeah.
This was years ago in his past, and he'd gone to an excellent Division III school. It helped him get into that Division III school. I don't doubt it. But at the same time, that kind of points out some of the just rank unfairness and distortion of sports.
Yeah. Let's talk about specialization at a
Mm-hmm.
young age. It has become the narrative that if you don't start specializing in the second, third, or fourth grade, that you're going to miss out on this lottery at the end of it. So you got to get in early and begin specializing. And I am a firm believer in the exact opposite of that.
Yes.
That for lots of reasons, athletics, in my opinion, is the best classroom for life, and learning how to get up from failure is one of those things that's really important. And if you only do one sport, you're going to miss out on all those opportunities. Plus, culturally, you're going to get locked into the same group of friends for the longest period of time and not be able to meet this cross section of life. What are your feelings about specialization at a young age, and kind of break down what you lose if you do that?
Well, there's been so much about specialization and how it's really kind of, with a few exceptions, with a few sports where so-called elite status is reached at very young ages. It used to be this way anyway, like gymnastics, for one. Or where sports where the skill development is so fine that you need to start early, like golf, which I didn't know that. In the vast majority of sports, to reach an elite level, multi-sport, you got to play a lot of sports. It's even apart from all those social things you're talking about, which are obviously important, like you don't want to be around the same kids doing the same thing all the time, but from an athlete development perspective, the research is very clear that playing multi-sports is better for you. You're going to become a better athlete. You're going to be more physically literate. You play one sport, it helps you with another sport. It's just, it's so obvious. And all the top athletes are always saying this. The top athletes played multi-sports. It's just like, it should be an article of faith, okay? But that's not the way we're being that sports are being offered to kids. I mean, there are some, but the message that middle and upper income families are getting is that it's a scramble, and you got to get them in. The earlier, the better. Earlier, the better. Get them playing one thing so that they don't fall behind. It's this, like, you're going to fall behind your peers. And I appreciate that is hard to resist, because if everybody else is doing it, what the hell do I know? I'm just a random parent, and my neighbors are all, putting their third grader in travel lacrosse. What do I know? And yet, it is far more likely for those kids to burn out, just get sick to death. I mean, think about it. I think about when you were in third grade. I can barely remember it, but the thought of doing the same thing all the time, having no control over your schedule, having, you know, your summer and weekends sort of preordained what you're going to be doing. It's just not, it's like obviously not healthy. And I think most parents kind of recognize it and maybe grit their teeth or think something's got to change. So it's not good for kids. They're more apt to get hurt, especially girls, by the way. And it's just so, it's just sad that that's what it's come to. Now, I have to point out, and this is something I've come to only recently, that I think for many parents, I don't have the data on this. I will say that I don't have data on it, but I've heard it and enough to think that it's true that for certain sports, if say you don't have any delusions about your child making it to the Olympics or becoming a pro, you just like, but you really want them to play in high school. Like that's the way I was. I just wanted my kids to play in high school. And if they wanted to play in college, that's up to them. If they have what it takes and they want to make it happen, it was not anything I was going to be. Well, in certain sports, even if your parents are really athletic and you're an athletic kid, if you don't specialize earlier than makes sense, they're probably not going to make the high school team. And that's because it's this brutality cascade where everybody is specializing in lacrosse at third grade. Then if you start thinking you've been playing multi-sports, but then you decide, well, I might want to play lacrosse in high school. So you pick it up in seventh grade. You may not make the team because you haven't been doing it since fifth grade, which is crazy, or third grade, you know? It's not healthy, it's not good, but that's kind of how we've devolved. So I like to think, and I am a big believer that kids should play, not that they should play more, but that playing one thing all the time is not good for your physical or mental health. And it's not great for families, just families in general. But the kid playing, it's not great.
No. Well, and to back up your point, we've had on the show here, we've had many Olympic gold medalists, Hall of Famers from all the major sports, and every one of them has said to a person that a big part of their development as a young person, as a young athlete, was playing the other sports and the motor skill development and the competitiveness that taught them. And this is coming from the top athletes in the world at their sport. And yet that messaging just isn't being delivered clearly because of who's delivering the message.
Yes. Well, and I think if a normal parent who doesn't have maybe Olympic genes might say, well, that's fine for you. You're like a superstar, but my kid's not a superstar. I just wanted to make the high school team. And that's where it gets tricky, because for the superstars, they can float on to all the different teams and they're great. But if you just want them to make the high school team, I think it's very unfortunate that they probably will have to specialize earlier than they should, not in third grade. No one should be specializing in elementary school.
Yeah.
That is so crazy. But, that probably earlier than they should, which is like late, junior year of high school. In a perfect world, junior year of high school. And by the way, I don't know if you saw the new study that just came out a month or so ago, led by Arne Gulich, who's this German researcher. He studies this issue of early sports specialization and specialization beyond sports. And he's done these fantastic, exhaustive studies showing that it's those who focus at a young age on one thing. He has this graph that shows that it's like the slow and steady wins the race. Slow and steady over time, multiple interests, they're the ones who reach the top. And the early specializers, they get there sooner. They're going to be better than your kid who doesn't for a while.
Yeah.
But then, it's the ones who pick it up slowly and develop at a more natural pace and play multi things and learn multiple things. They're the ones who reach the top of their fields.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that, based on the research that I've read and just my own experience in coaching. We, as a coach, and I've heard now my son is starting high school athletics and talking to his main sport's football.
Mm-hmm.
And many of these football coach, what other sport do you play? We want to see you play multiple sports. Are you competitive in the other sport that you play? It is critical. And I think, one of the things that I don't want to do on this show is bash sports, because that's the opposite of what I want to do. Every good thing I have in my life, literally every good thing I have in my life, came from athletics and me being a part of it along the way. But the system, and I want to be careful about the word system. I had Megan Bartlett on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked her about, why is the system broken? And she laughed at me and said, there is no system, that we have no system in America for youth sports. It's all kind of this hodgepodge put it together, and everybody just kind of does their own thing. How do you think we can shift this? Is there a roadmap that you think can make it a major change to how we think about this?
I think that short of legislation that kind of imposes some rules and standards, I do think one thing could shift it just by changing the incentives, and that is if college sports did away with the admissions advantage and did away with athletic scholarships and just gave scholarships. Like, I don't see why that is. I'm all for giving kids a leg up, help the kids that need a leg up, help the kids that need financial support who are deserving. But if we considered, maybe just not doing it for athletics, but doing it for the student body as a whole, and eliminated the admissions advantage so that athletics are treated just like every other extracurricular activity. So the kid who's working after school, say, or in theater, or, playing the orchestra, those kids don't have a built-in admissions advantage. If we treated sports the same way, I think you would see some of this dissipate, because what's driving a lot of it is that edge in college admissions. And again, it's only to keep sports on the same level. It's to not elevate them, to have them on the same level. And universities are supposed to be about education, and it's kind of gotten lost in all of this.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing to think about with the amount of money that is being made at that level. I don't see that happening anytime soon. What would be, so I think we just have to continue to have conversations at the grassroots level to help families understand and give them information to make decisions that best help their children along the way.
And I wanted to, before we move on, I wanted to say one more thing about multi-sport play, because it occurred to me when you were talking about it. And something I rarely hear, but I feel strongly about, one of the advantages of playing on multiple teams is that, especially if you're like maybe really good at one sport and not as good at the other sport, I think it is so great for kids to be in the position of not being the best kid on the team, we
talk about this all the time on this show. Yeah.
It's like, you learn that, so now I know what it feels like to be ignored by the coach.
Totally.
Like, when you're really good, they pay attention to you. But when you're not, to be ignored, forgotten, and like, what about those kids? So it just helps you become a better person, I think, in a lot of ways.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. There's so much value to not being the top person on a secondary team.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this specialization, I talk about this a lot, specialization creates is a lack of failure. You do the same thing over and over again. You're going to get to the point where you're better at it and better at it and better at it and better at it, and you don't make as many mistakes. You may not reach the highest level, but you're going to make less mistakes in that skill set. You go try something new or do something new, you're going to make more mistakes. And life is a series of failures. Trust me, it is just
don't I know it?
Yes, it is. And in the classroom for life, that sports world, that athletics world can teach kids how to practice, go compete, fail, have to get back up, practice again, and then go potentially fail again in front of people, friends, family, and have the temerity and the strength to get up and do that.
Yeah.
That's where that development, which is what athletics is supposed to be, the ancillary part of education.
Yes.
That's the education that kids are missing if they don't experience that failure that we're talking about.
Well, and if parents don't allow them to like endure that misery and pain and not run in and try to get things fixed with the coach or the athletic director, like to just live with let them experience that and get up the next day. And, it's okay for kids to be sad, and it's okay for them to be upset about a bad game. And that's part of the whole beauty of it. That's why we do it, and, but again, with the focus on performance and, reaching the next level and being recognized and acknowledged, and then the whole social media angle, which, is another pernicious, feature of this space, that important stuff gets lost, which is again those experiences.
Well, I just want you to know, you just said the best word that we've had on the podcast in the last year. Pernicious has not been used. That's what you get when you get a best-selling author on the show. So thank you for using the word pernicious. So I want to talk about character, and I know this is something that you're thinking about, and I want to give you kind of my
I want to hear it.
And then you can tear it apart. So I all the time I tell people that sports doesn't build character after you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. It reveals your character. Mm-hmm. And it certainly does for adults who are coaching and adults who are athletes. But I do think up to a certain age that if handled appropriately, sports can help build character. Mm-hmm. But if you're getting the wrong coaching and you're getting the wrong modeling from your coaches and the people around you, it's still building character. It's just not the good kind of character that we want to have represented from our young athletes as they're going on this journey. I'm curious about your thoughts about how you think about athletics being an integral part or not being an integral part of building character in young people.
Well, I think first of all, you have to define our terms. Like, what do you mean by character?
Yeah.
I think sports, and I've interviewed this woman in Idaho named Sharon Stahl, who's kind of the expert on this. She studied it for years, and she has found that playing sports, there's evidence that playing sports does build discipline, loyalty, this hardworking ethos. And that's great. At the same time, playing sports does not build any kind of ability to reason morally or, do the right thing. And as she pointed out, terrorists are often loyal and hardworking and disciplined. But what is it for? Is it for something other than yourself? Is there a selfless quality? Is there an honesty and integrity? And like, that's how I think of character. I mean, it's not just like toughness, discipline, showing up on time, although that's important. It's not, being kind or thoughtful or putting yourself second to your team. And that if this isn't taught, it's her view that if this isn't taught, it's not just going to happen. It's not like just by playing basketball, you're suddenly going to be able to, think more of other people or put their needs ahead of yours. It needs to be taught. And some coaches really are trying. And yet the ones I've spoken to have said they're up against a culture that does not value this, or it's certainly not the top of the heap. Their culture in sports is about winning. And in the individual, increasingly about the individual and how they're doing, how are their stats, what is
how many clicks did they get on their social media
exactly
page?
It's about the individual. It is not the team, and even in team sports. So they feel that it's a real struggle for them to try to emphasize the team, the unit, their teammates, caring about each other, which is again I think, and certainly what I believe about the character building aspect of sports should be That should be a big part of it.
Totally. And so our goal is to, obviously if you're a coach and, you can impact one kid or 10 kids, but what we want to do is impact all the coaches out there that listen to this so that there's an impact on a full spectrum of kids, right?
Yeah.
And what you have to do, in my opinion, is that when you build your program, you start with that first. And then winning should be a byproduct of all the good things that you do in developing young people, both in their personal side of their lives, their character side of their lives, and their skill development. And those things can go hand in hand, that your skill development is developed in a way that is teaching you how to go through a process in a very safe way, safe environment, and learning all of those key character components that are what I think critical to becoming a healthy individual as an adult. And if done inappropriately at the youth level, we're creating more problems.
Yes.
If we start the right way, right? Or if we didn't do it at all.
Yeah.
And so for a coach, when you get a group of kids, the umbrella of your program should be, how do I treat my kids? How do my kids treat each other? How do the kids treat their teammates and the opponents? What are the expectations for the parents? How do we have parents treat officials and opposing parents and kids? Those are the things that should be overarching in your program. And that's where you can start having something that is building something like positive character in young people. That's my opinion as an old coach.
Yeah. Well, and I think also integral to that is the notion of fun.
Yeah.
Because you're going to lose so many kids. Like,
right.
if you're all about, if you're emphasizing the wrong things, if it's all about outcomes, getting the trophy, kids are going to quit. It's not fun, because then it's just a grind. And the character stuff is I think why many parents want their kids to play sports, but it has to be central to the program. It can't be peripheral and accidental. It has to be intentional.
Yeah, and fun. I should have put that word. It should be fun. That's why we all start, right? Or which we all should start. Sometimes parents force kids in, but we pick up a ball and throw it with our friend because it's fun, right?
Yes.
We play tag because it's fun. We do all of those things because it's fun, and the way that we squeeze that fun out as coaches, because there's only winning. That's the part that has to go away, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and I sympathize with coaches. I certainly felt like this as a coach myself, that I really cared about the broader stuff. I cared about the kids. I really loved the kids I worked with. They were so fresh, is the word. Fresh in a good way. Like, I really like teenagers, and they were great. And a handful of parents, and not many. It was really not that many. Most were great, but a few can really kind of wreck the whole thing.
One bad conversation can drive a coach away.
Yeah, it just makes you like, why am I doing this?
That's right.
But they feel pressure from parents to ramp it up, to do more, to get, why aren't you doing, parents can like be eyeballing what you're doing, and even not even at the high school level, at the youth level, like, why aren't you doing more of this and that? And why aren't you focusing more on, strength and conditioning, or whatever the particular complaint is, in order to get to the trophy at the end of the season? So coaches have that pressure from, even if you're well-intended and you want to do it right, you have to know how to handle that situation as well. And in my talks with coaching groups, I really encourage knowing what you stand for, like being clear about what your values are, and being very transparent with the coach, other parent, like, this is what we're doing, just so you know, I believe, and if you think everyone should play, everyone's going to get playing time, like, just to be very transparent about it, so that any pushback you get is, you can at least go back to, remember, this is what, I'm all about this, it's not about the trophy.
Yeah, I tell young coaches and anyone that will listen to me, that when you start a program, that as a coach, it's really important that everybody knows what you stand for, right? And that list can be really long. This is what we stand for. But then this is what we won't stand for is probably more
Oh.
important. And
Mhm.
that list needs to be really short, because if that list is really long, all you're doing is legislating and adjudicating that
Mhm.
list all the time, but
Yeah.
making sure that that list covers those things, that if they're whatever the bad habits that parents are
Mhm.
having, kids will have, making sure that that's covered in them. We will not stand for this, because it's not part of your development as a student athlete, and as a student, young person, and as an athlete second.
So what are some we will not tolerate things? I like that idea. That's smart.
Yeah, so when we talk to coaches about this, parents don't get to talk about in a high school program. This is more in a high school program, but don't talk about playing time or system in the middle of the season, and don't talk, about the kids' teammates. And then after games, you cannot talk to your kid for at least an hour after the game about the game. Tell them you love them and you love watching them play. And
Mhm.
if you don't, once that emotion goes away, then a lot of the negative experience that's going to happen is going to be dissipated. And so those are the things that we want. If you break those rules, we won't stand for it. You can't talk to, to coaches in the middle of a season. And secondarily, you can't talk about the kids that your kid is playing with in a bad way. And then don't talk to your child directly after the game about the game. Tell them you
Yeah.
love them and that you love watching them play, and keep that list just to that. And then all the other things are all the positive things that you're trying to develop as part of your program.
Yeah. See, now my only problem with that approach of don't talk to the coach until the season's over is that.
Just about system and playing time. That's it.
Oh, okay, okay.
No,
Yeah,
no, you can talk to me about anything. Like your
yeah,
kid has an issue, but what I want from that is I want your kid to come home and say, I want to play more. Okay, go talk to coach yourself,
yeah.
because someday I'm not going to
Yes.
call your boss and say, my daughter or my son needs a raise, or
Yeah.
they don't like the person that they're sitting next to in the queue, right? This is that opportunity, the character
Yeah.
building, the opportunity to walk into a coach's office, which should be safe, and say,
Yes.
Coach, I want to play more. Tell me how to do that or why I'm not. And
Yeah.
if parents take that part away, now we're eliminating the coach's ability to help develop that character.
Yeah. Like it's teaching them how to be an adult, you
That's
know?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's classroom for going to corporate America someday, or a relationship someday,
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
done appropriately.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah, not that you can't talk to them. I didn't mean to sound like that, but just about those things that drive coaches away. Like,
Yes.
let them, at the end of the season, you don't like how much your kid played or their playing time, or how, what the system is. That's the time at the end of the season to schedule an appointment and sit down and say, hey, coach, here are my goals as a player. I want to be a starter on the varsity team, or I want to be a college player. And how do I go about doing that and changing my role within the team? Those are the times to have those conversations with the parents and the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I heard this really wonderful bit of advice from a woman I know who's an athletic director who said they have a new rule at their school, which is that when parents call and want to have a meeting with the athletic director, the, the the child must be a part of the meeting,
I love it.
because so many times parents are like, they would, she would be so upset if she knew I called, but it's
Don't
just
call.
but she's so unhappy on the team, and we all know she's got so much potential, and she wouldn't want me to call you. But okay, so I think you're going to like cut in half the number of
Totally.
appointments, and it's going to push it back to the child to take ownership.
Totally.
Uh,
Totally.
anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, and that's that opportunity to have that uncomfortable conversation about yourself and what you're advocating for yourself as a young person, that you're going to have to do a lot in life if you want to get somewhere. And
Yeah.
that's the part of sport to me that is so valuable to young people.
Yeah, and at the same time, coaches need to make themselves available and approachable,
100%.
because many of them are not. They
Yeah,
have
don't say you have an open door policy and keep your curtains down and your door locked.
yes, and
Yeah.
have a vibe of like, I don't want to talk to you. You're just nobody.
Yeah.
You're not important. They
Yeah.
have to work on that as well, so that kids do feel like they're approachable. And I also think coaches, it's easy to forget how influential you are for kids. Like, you're just yourself going about your life. This is your job. But for kids, you have so much, kids, I think, often feel powerless and at the mercy of their coach and don't want to make the coach mad. And, it's easy for us coaches to kind of discount that. Um,
Absolutely.
and it's something to watch out for, I think, as a coach, to remember how much they look up to you.
So last topic here today, before we close, is advice to parents. You talk about the importance of modeling behavior for your young athletes. What advice would you give to parents as they're going on this journey? Kind of pick a phase, because there's so many different steps along the way. But as a model for your young people, what advice would you give to parents?
Well, I mean, I think all parents want their kids to like turn out well. You know what I mean? Like be employed, have friends, maybe have a partner, be engaged in the world, and to have like their eye on the prize, which is a responsible adult, like so that your conduct needs to conform with that desired outcome. So you have to kind of model that, I think. And if you're the kind of terrible behavior that we've seen at games and things like that gets the attention, you can't behave like that. you can't scream and shriek and carry on like a maniac and then expect your children to be like emotionally regulated. So that's part of it, I think. Also, and it's really hard to maintain that kind of perspective, because you can you get caught up in games and it's all permissible somehow to be a maniac in games, and it seems so important in the moment, and it's very hard to keep perspective. But if you can kind of keep your eye on the prize, like what is it we really want here, and like have a grip on reality, which is that 6 to 7% of high school athletes play in college. 2% of college athletes play professionally. Like, so most of their sports experience is going to be when they're young, when organized sports, when they're young, when they're in high school. So like, what's the best outcome that we could have, your child can have? It's really learning. It's what youth sports are for, which is education, to learn, to get exercise, to make friends, to kind of grapple with failure and success. And of course, everyone wants to win, but that emphasis crowds out these more important child development, like what you want from your child, how you want them to be. You want them to be good people. You want them to be kind. You want them to be responsible, disciplined. You want them to show up on time. All that stuff you want from your child, that's what really matters. And it's unrelated to whether they're the highest scorer or MVP. And those externals can become so disproportionately important. So it's just kind of like clawing your way back to reality, to the data, and like what's important to you. Like, you got to keep your eye on the prize and put the kids at the center of it. In that, I'm always struck by how they are like the forgotten piece of the youth sports discussion. It's all about adults making decisions on behalf of kids. The parents and the coach like talking and figuring out what's the best plan for the kid. And like, well, hello, like, what do you think? They need more of a voice in their own athletic lives, because they get whipsawed by their parents, get whipsawed by their coaches. They need to be the center of it. So that's my 2 cents.
I think it's great advice. Make sure that the kids are the center of what you're doing, with a realistic expectation of what the outcome is supposed to be.
Yes, and I do appreciate that. You don't want to like crush their dreams.
Yeah.
You don't want to say, "Oh, you're never going to make it to college." Of course not. Like, but to leave it up to them to help. If that's what you want, you're going to work for it. We'll see, but you got to have a backup plan. And to not crush their dreams, but also to be realistic yourself about like, what's the likelihood that this is going to happen. And if they get there, great. And it's their doing anyway, because as you well know, it's the kids their ability and their drive that gets them into college and beyond. It has nothing to do with us parents. It's
100%.
them. So, kind of if you can withdraw yourself and let them kind of take charge of it a little more.
That's fantastic advice. I'm going to take it for myself. All right. So we do this with everybody at the end of the show. First of all, I could talk to you for hours. This has been fascinating. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
But if you could go back in time to your 14-year-old self, 13, 12, however old you want to go, tap yourself on your own shoulder and give a young Linda Flanagan some advice, what advice would that be?
It gets better. I used to tell my high school girls I coached all the time, like, you don't realize it at the time, but for many kids, I think high school is kind of borderline unbearable, and it's so fraught and so, it feels just so overwhelming at times, whether athlete or non-athlete, whatever you are. It's just a difficult time in your life. And I think I wish I had known then, and I'm sure I was told it, but that, just hang in there. It's going to get better. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep trying. I think it's really important to keep trying at things. And I always did. I wasn't one of the kids that was nonchalant, but I just think that high school, you think it's everything when you're in high school, and it's, there's a whole world after high school, a whole big world outside of high school. Yeah. So you appreciate, once you're grown up, you're like, wow, that really wasn't everything.
It's great advice. Okay. Most important, we talked about it's important to have fun. So we discussed this prior. I'm a big dad joke guy, and we do a dad joke at the end of every show, and you don't have one for me. So that's okay. I have dad jokes right here for us. So, oh God, I just opened this one up to here. We'll do this one. Okay. What do you call a kid fortune teller who ran away from school?
I don't know.
I've never heard this one before. This is fantastic.
What do you call that kid?
So what do you call a kid fortune teller who ran away from school? You call him or her a small, medium, at large. It's so good.
That's good.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for coming on the show. For folks out there, it's the book is called Take Back the Game. It was highly impactful on me. And just the fact that I've gotten the chance to meet you a couple of years later and do this interview is an honor for me. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. It was really nice to talk to you too.
All right. We'll hopefully you've got more projects coming. And we talked a little bit about off air. So maybe we have a chance to get you back on and discuss.
That'd be great.
All right. Thanks a lot. Welcome back. Anthony Leverett's here, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and just finished up my conversation with author Linda Flanagan. And what a great human being, first of all, and greatly appreciate her coming on the show. We talked about all sorts of different things related to youth sports. And I want to start just by clarifying some things on my end. We talk about the problems in youth sports a lot, but I want to be really clear. I love sports. I love athletics. I love what it can teach. I love what it can do for kids. I love what it did for me. I love what it's done for my family, all the things. What I want to be really careful is that it doesn't just feel like a bash session. And sometimes we get into this and there are so many issues and problems with it that's what it feels like. But remembering that sports can have a really positive impact on young people. And number one to remember is sports is fun. It's supposed to be fun. We all pick up a ball because it was fun. We all play tag because it was fun. And just remembering how to keep the fun involved in athletics. It's still fun for me to go up to the field and play catch. It's still fun for me to shoot baskets. Remember, your child is having fun and keep that at the forefront. Second, the thing that, Linda and I talked about that I think is really important, be realistic as you're thinking about the plan for your kids' ascension through this youth sports to high school sports. And if you're hoping to college, be realistic about what that journey is going to culminate with your kid. And sometimes that's hard. You got to step back and listen to other people tell you kind of what that trajectory for your kid is, and be realistic about where that's going to end. And then the last thing, I want to really touch on is athletics in young people can build character if done the right way. I say this all the time. At pressure and trials and tribulations don't build character when you're older. They reveal your character. And when we're young, we should have trials and tribulations that are safe, and we have, winning or losing or going through a journey. That's the time to build that character. And coaches need to remember, when you're building a program, that at the umbrella of your program is, how do you do that? How do you make sure that everything you're teaching, the way you set up your program, is set up in a way that keeps that at the forefront? Not just about winning or losing, not just about getting to the pros. It's about building character in those young people that come into your gym, onto your field. Again, thank you so much for listening to the show. Share this with people. And, if you think there's value, share it with your friends and family. And we're going to keep bringing this content to you as often as we can. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and Happy New Year. Off to a good start. We'll talk to you again soon.